Hello, I'm Joel Telpner. I'm the Chief Legal Officer for Input Output Global, and I am really excited to be with all of you here today. I'm especially excited because I get to talk about this really cool new concept we've been working on and we want to introduce to the world called Decentralized Consortium Funding, a new model for engagement, for execution, for management and governance. You know, ever since human beings started to come together in villages, in towns, and began to start engaging in enterprise and activity with each other, we've been working on how do we govern ourselves? How do we come together? How do we manage enterprises? How do we collaborate? How do we cooperate? And throughout history, we keep trying. We have successes, we have failures, we have good examples, we have bad examples. On the governance side, we can go back to the ancient Greeks and look at some of the wonderful things that they introduced to the world as far as inclusive democracy. But we've also seen governments really go in the wrong direction with dictatorships and authoritarian governments ultimately resulting in genocide. We've seen people try all different ways to launch businesses and to manage enterprises and collaborate. The traditional corporate model actually is not too bad in that it recognized the concept of ownerships and created this concept in which their directors of a company have fiduciary responsibility to shareholders. But we've also seen how corporate structures can be very narrow and myopic, where executives can get into their glass towers and forget about the rest of the world and lose their ability to make sound management decisions. One of the most recent examples is the financial crisis of 2008, where we lost trillions of dollars in part because of a lot of bad managerial decisions. So there must be a better way, right? There must be a way for us to govern ourselves, for us to manage ourselves, for us to collaborate together, for us to work together, to launch products and projects in a way that hopefully is more successful. Well, that's what we've been spending a lot of time thinking about. So IO Global decided to get together with some other really leading thinkers in the world of blockchain and in the world of corporate governance and management and see if we could fashion some new suggestions, some new ideas. And we've been working with the Blockchain Research Institute, with Boston Consulting Group and others to try to see if we can take what's happened in the past, what hasn't worked, and combine those lessons with where we are in technology today, particularly blockchain, and see if there's a better way, a better approach forward. And that has led us to this concept of decentralized consortium funding. In particular, if we look at some of the technological changes, we think that we've got a great opportunity to combine technology with traditional concepts of governance and management and potentially forge a new approach. You know, we've been lucky to have now for about 40 years the internet, which has really expanded the way that we can interact together on a global basis. In particular, it has given us access to volumes of data that we never had in the past. But just because we have all of this additional data doesn't mean that we make better management or governance decisions. So in a way, that's where we think blockchain technology comes in, because blockchain is, in a way, the next level of where we've been with the internet. It allows us to take this ability to come together on a global basis in a decentralized way, but to also use internet blockchain technology itself in order to create consensus systems using distributed ledgers, using smart contracts. We can collaborate potentially, come together, make decisions in a way that we've never been able to before, and do it hopefully in a much more efficient way, or at least a collaborative way that increases the amount of success. So we've been looking at and studying what's gone right and what's gone wrong in the past with respect to businesses in general and with respect to blockchain projects in looking at the what's happened since the ICO boom and bust, and why, trying to understand why some projects succeeded and why many of them failed, and to see what lessons we can learn and to see if there were ways that we could potentially suggest doing something different and better. And so as we've been doing research and studying various blockchain projects and coming up with this notion, again, that we call Decentralized Consortium Funding, or DCF. We are working on a white paper where we can share our ideas with all of you. But that white paper is going to be just a starting point. It's not the end. We are very much looking forward to getting all of your input, getting the input from the community as to the direction we are going in, to see what you think, to see whether the ideas that we're putting out there make sense, and to come up with potentially a new model, a new prototype, a new approach that can be used when people are launching, growing, and building blockchain-related businesses to increase the likelihood of success, to increase the involvement of the community in the right way, to make sure that stakeholders are being identified and heard, and to really allow blockchain to really achieve the promise that we all think is there. But even with something like blockchain, positive change doesn't happen all by itself. We have technology that allows us to potentially do things differently now, but even technology has potential benefits and potential pitfalls. And so if we're going to really take advantage of what blockchain allows us to do, we've got to really carefully steward it. We've got to carefully think about the right way to govern and to manage, to launch, to grow projects, and try to increase the likelihood of success. And so the DCF model that we've been thinking about tries to balance what I would call the organized chaos that we often see in blockchain ecosystems, especially as various parties are coming together to try to build products or projects, and combine that with appropriate levels of directed efforts that recognizes things that have worked in the past in traditional management structures, but also recognizes the opportunities that blockchain allows us to potentially think about new ways to govern. And so we've been looking at a system that we think is a combination potentially of both bottom up and top down. And what I mean by that is that traditional corporate enterprises are often managed through a top down structure where you've got a management team. They make the decisions, they hire people below them to implement the decisions, but ultimately it's a small group at the top that make decisions. And as said, at times, those decisions are made without a lot of input, which can result in bad decisions. But what if we could take that and also add to that a bottom-up approach? In other words, we have with blockchain the ability to obtain input, to allow people to vote, to use smart contracts, to use algorithms to allow decision-making to be done at a broader level than just the top level management. And so if we could combine the top-down management approach with a bottom-up governance approach, maybe it becomes a better system, because maybe we're able to gain a lot more by empowering stakeholders, by expanding the universe of decision makers, by hearing other voices, by allowing a more diverse input into the decision making that hopefully would result in better results. Now, we know that in the world of blockchain, we hear a lot about decentralization. It's almost a mantra that, hey, blockchain allows us to democratize decision making. It allows us to decentralize how we think about things. Well, that is true, but we're also not talking about decentralizing everything where every single decision is made by a vote of every member of the community, because we know that for businesses and enterprises and projects to succeed, you still need experts. You still need people that have deep knowledge in technology. You need people that have deep knowledge in software, in being able to develop products. You need people that have deep knowledge and experience in managing and launching and growing businesses. And so that means that the right combination, which may be different for every project, it may be different for every type of business, but the right combination, hopefully going forward, is some mixture of this management coming from the top, but participation, voting, and empowerment involvement coming from the bottom up as well. And so our notion of decentralized consortium funding is intended to be a potential roadmap for people to consider and to adopt that allows them, as they are launching a business or ecosystem, and it doesn't have to be blockchain based, but in particular in the world of blockchain, to potentially more successfully launch that product, to better manage the funds that have been raised through, for example, the sale of tokens, and to increase the likelihood of success. And if you look at what happened in a lot of blockchain startups going back to 2017 or even sooner, there were successes, thankfully, but ultimately a lot of them failed. And why did a lot of them fail? Well, in the research that we did, there are a number of reasons. Some projects just, the founders may have been great on the technology side, but they just lack basic business acumen or experience. And they just never had any experience in launching a business. And so, it's hard to launch and grow a business if you've never done it before, or you've never had to get in the trenches of what it really takes day in and day out to make a business successful. We also saw that there were a lot of projects that maybe relied on false or incorrect economic models as to what would really drive adoption of the product. And then, of course, there were unfortunately a lot of projects where the people that launched the projects just failed to deliver. The code did not meet expectations. The founders were much more interested in unfortunately lining their own pockets than trying to create a successful business, or they just were committing at times, unfortunately, outright fraud. And so those types of problems, unfortunately didn't, hurt a little bit the blockchain ecosystem, but it's time for us to move forward in a new, better way. And a DCF process, we think, just might solve some of the problems we saw in prior blockchain projects and those failures. Because with Decentralized Consortium Funding, at the end of the day, what we are trying to do is suggest an approach that would allow parties that are launching a project to come together and to bring developers, to bring coders, to bring those early innovators that want to participate in that ecosystem, to bring the highly motivated people that want to acquire a project's digital assets or tokens, and allow them to all participate in a way that blockchain technology allows us to do, but we really haven't taken advantage of. And so the notion of a DCF is to come together with a group on an interim, not permanent basis, but to allow project founders to bring together a team and to identify the components of that team, which may include, again, the right type of business experts, developers, coders, maybe investors, legal experts, other types of people with the right domain experience, and to come together and to collaborate and to figure out the right way to make decisions, to come up with a balance between those decisions that are delegated to certain types of traditional management functions and combine those with decisions that go out to a larger community, maybe a subset or maybe the entire community of digital asset or token holders, depending on the type of decision and involvement, but to involve people, individuals, enterprises, and organizations in a way that increase the likelihood of success for that blockchain-related project or for any project, and to hopefully nurture that project to the point where it reaches a level of maturity where a DCF or that consortium no longer needs to continue to be there. And so the DCF ultimately is intended to be an approach, an idea, a suggestion as to how we can potentially take any business, but again, particularly in the world of blockchain, and come up with a better way to ensure that as an early stage or startup, there's a much greater likelihood of success. And in particular, as I mentioned, one of the reasons that we are so excited about potentially being able to do something different in how we come together and organize and manage our collective activities enterprises is because blockchain as a technology creates a much more efficient system that we've never had in the past to allow us to reach those constituents, to reach all of the stakeholders, to allow stakeholders, constituents, and participants to express their views, to vote, to participate. The process of allowing voting through smart contracts is something that we just never have had before. And so it is much different than old organization enterprise structures where, yes, we've had shareholder participation. Yes, in governments we have voting, but we haven't had the ability to interact and communicate with various stakeholders to the same extent that we can now. And so utilizing blockchain in particular, we think that combining that with what we're calling a DCF type of structure will allow us to bring together different types of consortium, different types of members, different types of participants, which may change over the life of a project, but to bring them together, to allow them to all provide their input, to provide their expertise, to provide their knowledge, their excitement, their involvement, to increase the likelihood of success of a project, to be able to create a greater level of transparency, to be able to create a greater level of reporting and responsibility between those people launching a project and the ultimate investors or the token holders or the people that are putting their faith in that project, to create that accountability and responsibility and interaction in a way that we've just never seen before. So that's what we're so excited about. We have looked at a number of governance models. We've looked at various blockchain projects. We have put together what we think is going to be an interesting idea that would be used, hopefully going forward, for all kinds of projects in the blockchain space and elsewhere. And we're putting all of our ideas, all of that research, all of our suggestions together in a white paper that's going to be coming out into the market soon. And that is what we want all of you to look at. That's what we want all of you to give us your feedback on. That's what we want all of you to give us your great ideas about. And together, we think all of us together with you, can create a really amazing, cool, new way to ensure that blockchain projects are successful, to push the blockchain ecosystem forward, to continue to revolutionize the way human beings come together, interact, launch enterprises, work with each other, and democratize the world and create decentralized activities in a right, smart way and in a pragmatic way that allows us to all succeed. So again, thank you all for listening today. Please watch going forward for this white paper to come out, and we look forward to your participation and feedback.